How's everybody today? Good. Well, you know, yesterday we probably had the best 2 days of two practices in a day, you know, that we've had. I really like the way the players responded to making the corrections and the improvement that we needed to make from the scrimmage, and we made some progress today. And the weather probably cooperated a little bit too, that it was not quite as warm as it has been. But, you know, today I think we had, after 2 practices yesterday, a little bit of what I call the poor me's. You know, poor me, I'm tired, poor me, I'm hot, poor me, it's, I'm sore and this and that and all that, and really had to work to get them going, but they responded well and we got something out of practice. And, you know, tomorrow is the last 2 a day that we have, and then we'll be, you know, 1 a days Thursday and Friday for the scrimmage on Saturday. And, you know, but I'm pleased with the progress that we're making. I think we're, you know, things are starting to take shape. You know, we're still working Blake Sims a little bit at quarterback, but probably a little bit more at running back. Brent Callaway's, you know, coming along at running back too. And so, you know, Christian Jones is probably a little bit more of a receiver now, probably settled into that. And, you know, Barrett Jones is probably going to be the guy that has to play multiple positions for us. He's a bright guy. He can do it all. He actually did a good job of playing center with just 3 days' work when Vallejos was sick. So we feel like he can play center guard or tackle. And for us to get our best players on the field, you know, sometimes you need a guy that can play multiple positions like that. So we feel good about the progress that he's made, and he's really made significant improvement at tackle. So, you know, we don't have any new injuries to report. You know, Square got poked in the eye, so he had a patch on his eye, but he was still able to work. No issues or problems, and but other than that, we don't have any injuries to report.
Coach, when we got to talk to Jim McElwain a couple weeks ago, he mentioned that William Vallejos has been really helpful to the quarterbacks because he's, being a veteran, he can identify defensive fronts really quickly. Can you just comment on his ability to do that and how the quarterbacks have come along and identifying on their own?
Yeah, I think our quarterbacks are both bright guys and both can do it, but I do think that because our offensive line needs to communicate the line calls, to have somebody that can ID, you know, the mic and that kind of thing in the runs is helpful to the offensive line because they can communicate amongst themselves when there's a lot of noise and all that type of thing. So, but I really do think our quarterbacks are capable and really don't miss a lot of checks because nobody tells them what to check to. They have to do that based on the front ID. So they're both very capable, but it does help when you have smart guys up front because they have to communicate the calls so that they work together correctly, you know, to make the running plays work. And that's one of the things that we didn't do as good a job of last year. I felt like we had enough ability, but we made a lot of mental errors in the offensive line because of the lack of experience, freshman guys playing, and even when we made the right calls, which we made the right calls a lot of the time, they don't trust and believe in it and execute it. So that's gotten a lot better, and that's why I feel like, you know, our offensive line should be better this year.
Coach, I was just curious about junior college guys coming in, particularly Quentin Dial, if you could sort of talk about where he is and the guys who went through the spring, where they are relative to.
Right. Well, you know, Quentin and Jesse, both in the defensive line, have, you know, made an impact. You know, those guys are in our top 4, you know, defensive ends some kind of way. I don't know who the starters are at that position right now. I think we have 4 guys that are capable, and we have some young guys that are freshmen, and Billingsley, who probably could contribute as well. But those guys have made a ton of progress since the spring. Jesse and Quentin both, they're a little older, they're bigger, stronger guys, but, you know, their confidence in what they're supposed to do. But typically what happens, you know, to these guys when they come into fall camp is if a guy hadn't been here before, and even some of the younger guys who had been here in the spring, you know, they hit the wall a little bit at this time of the year. And, you know, they kind of make progress, they hit the wall a little bit, and then at some point in time, you know, they kind of catch back up mentally and get confidence in what they're doing, and you see them start to sort of make progress again. And I think all the new guys in the program have at some point in time in these first 13 or 14 practices have done that. but those two older guys have been able to sustain it a little bit better, and it's probably because of their maturity. And I think that's the key to young guys playing is, do they have enough maturity to be able to sustain the level of intensity and effort and that you have to learn how to do all the stuff, and then how fast you have to do it. And that's the thing that showed up in the scrimmage with a lot of the young guys, and we'll hope to see a lot of improvement in the next scrimmage with those guys.
Yeah, staying up front, I was going to ask you about some of those guys we had, the new guys, Brandon Ivory, DJ Petway, Jeffrey Pagan. How are they doing?
Well, they're all doing fine. I mean, they're making progress, but I think each one of those guys, you know, they get sort of a little bit maybe overloaded with new information and knowledge in terms of assignments. Then they start worrying about what to do, and then they forget about how to do it. And they don't have an idea of why it's important to do it that way because they can't see the big picture yet. But I see those guys sort of making progress. But you know, the other thing that's important to our team is that guys play with good intangibles, and that's something that most of these guys that we recruit don't really understand. They've been better than everybody else, so they haven't had to play with the kind of effort and toughness, mental intensity, hadn't had to think enough about what they need to do to execute the team scheme, and that's something that they got to learn. And all those guys are making very good progress, but I think they really don't understand how much they have to improve to catch up with some of the guys that have been here and doing it a lot and have that kind of maturity. But there's not a single freshman out there that we're disappointed in. I think each and every one is making progress at a different rate. Some guys that are making it at a fast enough rate that they could contribute this year.
And if I could, is there a typical kind of thing you look for or improvement that you see from a first scrimmage to a second scrimmage, and you know what kind of things?
Well, I think it's the very thing that we just talked about. You know, what you see a lot of these guys do in the first scrimmage is they're not playing fast. You know, they're trying to do the right thing, so they're sort of, you know, paralysis by analysis a little bit, and don't really play hard, don't really play fast, so you don't really see the kind of player that they are. And in each day of practice, you know, you see these guys starting to make progress incrementally, you know, maybe by inches, but you see the progress that they're making. And maybe it's not in total, and maybe it's not on a consistent basis, but you see flashes of, you know, these guys starting to figure it out. And I think at least when they go into the next scrimmage, they'll understand the intensity, the toughness, the effort that's expected, and they'll be a lot further along in terms of the repetition they've got to be able to execute and do their job, and then we can make a lot better evaluation on where we go with them from there.
I have two questions. The first one about Mark Barron. I saw him make a really athletic play at practice last night. He had to extend himself, reach up really high. That would indicate that his pectorals come along okay. How did he do in the scrimmage in that regard specifically?
He has no issues with that. I haven't seen him. He hasn't winced once, had one issue or problem, not reached out to swat a ball, not reach up to jump to catch a ball. He doesn't have any issues with that, I mean, at all. And I think you could ask him, and I shouldn't speak for him, but let me put it this way. I haven't seen any issues. He hasn't complained about anything, and I've asked him several times if he has any issues or problems, and it's like, why are we talking about this?
Okay, and then Philip Ely, how is he coming along? What has he done since?
Actually made some progress, actually doing a little bit better, starting to play a little faster. Looks a little bit better out there, and he's gotten more reps in the last 3 practices at quarterback because Blake's taken more reps at running back. For 2 reasons. You know, we see how Blake can develop as a runner, but we also want to see how Philip can do, you know, as a third quarterback. So he's done a nice job.
I was going to ask you about Hassan Clinton Dix and just how he's developing and how Mark Barron's kind of helped him or helped tutor him.
Well, you know, there's a lot of guys around him that have played a lot. You know, Mark, Robert Lester, and Will Lowry. You know, all those guys have a really good understanding of the system and what to do and make very few mental errors. And really all summer long tried to help him and coach him up, and I think that he has progressed nicely. He's a guy that has a lot of ability that we would certainly like to continue to work with, but I think he's sort of, we have more stuff in on offense and more stuff in on defense than we ever would have in for one game, because we throw all the you-know-what on the wall and see what sticks. And then whatever doesn't stick, we put it in the bucket and throw it on the wall again. You capiche? You understand what I'm trying to say? All right, so some of those guys have a lot of you-know-what in their bucket still that's getting thrown up against the wall. And we put all these packages in of stuff that we're going to do with different players on the field and all that, so these guys got to learn all this stuff. But we won't even do that stuff only against certain teams. And then now, starting this week, you know, we take a different team that we play, and we have one period in practice where we're going over a game plan for what we do against them. So if they even a little bit understood what they were doing before, now they're getting confused because we're making an adapted and adjusted to, you know, Mississippi State's offense or whatever. So this is probably the most difficult time for guys. And, you know, the place they have to make the most adjustments is in the offensive line and in the secondary. Those are the guys that probably have the most to learn. So, and, you know, Ha-Ha's hanging in there. He is the most pleasant, upbeat, positive, smile on his face all the time, easy to coach guy that wants to learn that we've probably had around here for a long time. I mean, he has really got a great disposition about doing it, and I think that'll help him probably in the long run.
What do you make of the latest SEC expansion talk, both in general and in particular with Texas A&M?
You know, really, I don't really know a whole lot about it, and I don't really have a strong opinion about it other than the fact that I have a tremendous amount of faith, trust, and confidence in our presidents, or the commissioner, who's done a fabulous job in this league, and all the people at the SEC office that, you know, they'll make a good decision about, you know, what's best for our league and how we proceed in the future, and I feel comfortable and confident with that. I know that my only experience with it is, and I guess this would say that I really would not oppose it, and I'm not saying that I think we should do it, I'm just saying I wouldn't oppose it, is my experience in the Big Ten. You know, when Penn State came in the league, there were all kinds of naysayers, and this was back in the 80s, and I don't remember the year, and I think it was the first time I was there as a defensive coordinator, you know, about, you know, why would we let a team that is as good as Penn State in the league, and, you know, it's going to mess up the balance of the league, and all these different negative, you know, things that people had to say about it. And the fact of the matter is Penn State opened up the whole East, you know, to the Big Ten. And when we could never get a player anywhere in the East at Michigan State before Penn State got into the league, it became one of our best faraway recruiting areas, you know, all the way from Tidewater, where Plexico Burris was from, or Julian Peterson from Washington, D.C., you know, all the way up through Philadelphia, all the way to New York City and New England, because the Big Ten got a tremendous amount of exposure in the East, which they never got before. So it actually helped Michigan State that Penn State got in the league. Now, it was another tough game we had to play, but, you know, we always play one more tough game than what we need to anyway. So, you know, and I have all the respect in the world for, you know, the Big 12 and, you know, a lot of good teams in that league, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Missouri. There's a lot of good teams over there. So, but I also feel like, you know, we've got very capable people in the right positions to make the right decisions for the future of the league. And we have a great league the way it is right now. So it doesn't need to get changed unless it benefits the league as a whole.
With Mark Barron, again, he seems pretty quiet when he's around us. Is he like that all the time with you guys, and is that a benefit that when he does speak that it means something?
I think Mark is very much respected as a leader on our team. I think he leads by example. He's a good worker. He's got really good practice habits. He's very conscientious and pays attention to detail. And I think he sets a great example for other players. And even though he's one of those guys that doesn't say much, when he does say something, he's probably one of the most respected guys on our team. And I think he has a presence about him that is felt by the players around him all the time. And I think that's important, that you have those kind of personality types on your team. And, you know, Mark has been a really good leader for our team, our secondary, and our defense in his own way. Thanks, Coach. All right.